There's a conversation happening in millions of households around the world, and yet somehow it never quite makes it to the dinner table. It happens in whispers, in uncomfortable doctor's offices, in moments where a man you love, your father, your husband, your brother, your son, suddenly starts making more trips to the bathroom than he used to, starts waking up in the middle of the night, starts struggling with something so basic, so fundamental, that it chips away quietly at his dignity before anyone even realizes what's happening. I want to talk about the prostate. Now, before you click away, stay with me. Whether you're a man reading this for yourself or a woman reading this for someone you love, what I'm about to share could genuinely change the trajectory of someone's health, and not in a vague, eat your vegetables kind of way. I mean real, specific, science-backed information that gives you actual power over something most people believe is completely out of their hands. Because here's the lie we've all been told, that prostate problems are just a natural part of getting older, that there's nothing you can do, that you just wait and hope and eventually deal with it when it arrives. That is not the whole truth, and you deserve the whole truth. First, let's understand what we're actually dealing with. The prostate is a small, walnut-shaped gland that sits directly beneath the bladder, wrapping itself around the urethra, the tube that carries urine out of the body. It's easy to forget it exists when it's behaving itself, but when it starts to grow, you feel every single millimeter of that growth. As men age, the prostate has a tendency to expand. Normal prostate tissue gives way to what doctors call hyperplasia, essentially an overgrowth of cells. And if that growth continues unchecked, it can move from benign enlargement to something far more concerning, including abnormal cells and, in some cases, prostate cancer. But here's what most people don't understand about why this happens. You'd think it would be simple, more testosterone, bigger prostate, but the relationship between hormones and prostate health is more nuanced than that. And understanding it is key to understanding what you can actually do about it. When testosterone enters the prostate, it doesn't stay as testosterone. It gets converted by an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase into something called dihydrotestosterone, or DHT. DHT binds to receptors in the prostate at a much higher concentration and with a much stronger grip than regular testosterone ever could. It's essentially a supercharged version of testosterone, and the prostate is particularly sensitive to it. This DHT then attaches to androgen receptors in the prostate, triggering changes, including growth. Now, here's where it gets interesting and a little counterintuitive. As men age, their testosterone levels actually decline. So you'd expect the prostate to shrink, right? Wrong. The prostate keeps growing. This tells us something important. Androgens like DHT are necessary for the initial development of the prostate through adolescence and early adulthood, but they're not the sole driver of the kind of enlargement that causes problems later in life. Something else is going on, something we have far more influence over than we've been led to believe. The real culprit: inflammation, imbalance, and a vicious cycle. Benign prostatic hyperplasia, BPH, which is the medical term for a non-cancerous enlarged prostate, happens because of a fundamental imbalance. In a healthy body, cells grow and die in a kind of rhythmic balance. New cells replace old ones, and life goes on without incident. But in a prostate developing BPH, there's more growth than death. The scales tip, and the reason they tip comes down to a surge in certain growth factors: epidermal growth factor, insulin-like growth factor, keratinocyte growth factor, and others that tell cells to keep multiplying even when they shouldn't. One of the biggest triggers for this imbalance: inflammation. I know that word gets thrown around a lot. Inflammation is the buzzword of the wellness world. attached to everything from chronic fatigue to skin problems. But in the context of the prostate, it's not just a buzzword, it's a mechanism, a real, measurable biological process with real consequences. Inflammation in the prostate can come from bacterial or viral infections, from hormonal shifts, from autoimmune responses, from urine reflexing back into the prostate ducts, and even from disruptions in what scientists are now calling the prostate microbiome, the community of microorganisms living within the prostate itself. Research on this is still emerging, but what we already know is significant. When that microbial community is disrupted, inflammation follows. Here's how the cycle works and why it's so hard to break once it starts. Inflammation triggers the release of chemical messengers called cytokines from immune cells. These cytokines, including one called IL-6, then stimulate growth factors like fibroblast growth factor 2, which cause prostate cells to proliferate. That new tissue growth then creates what's known as a local hypoxic environment. The new cells are hungry for oxygen, but they're not getting enough of it. So they release inflammatory markers, reactive oxygen species, which triggers more inflammation, which triggers more growth, which triggers more inflammation. Round and round it goes. It's a vicious cycle, and once you're inside it, getting out is genuinely difficult, which is exactly why prevention is so much more powerful than treatment. There's also one more piece to this puzzle: prostate smooth muscle tone. The prostate contains smooth muscle that's regulated by the sympathetic nervous system, our fight or flight system. When that nervous system is overactivated, it increases tension in the prostate, which worsens symptoms. And what activates the sympathetic nervous system? Blood sugar instability, dietary choices, obesity, and chronic stress. All things that are, to varying degrees, within our control. The genetic hand you're dealt, and why it's not the end of the story. Before we go further, let me acknowledge something important. Genetics play a role. BPH can be inherited in what's called an autosomal dominant pattern, which means if your father had an enlarged prostate, your odds of developing it are meaningfully higher. This is especially true if he developed it before age 60, severely enough to require surgical intervention. So yes, some of this is written in your DNA. But here's what I need you to hear. Genetics load the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger. Having a genetic predisposition doesn't sentence you to the same outcome your father experienced. It means you need to be more intentional, not resigned. The research shows clearly that the choices you make every single day either accelerate that genetic predisposition or slow it dramatically. You have more power here than you think. Let me show you exactly how to use it. What you can actually do. 5 powerful strategies. 1. Defeat metabolic syndrome before it defeats you. This might be the most important thing on this entire list, and it doesn't get nearly the attention it deserves. Metabolic syndrome is a cluster of conditions. Type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, excess abdominal fat, that tend to travel together and share a common root, a Western lifestyle high in processed foods, refined sugars, fatty meats, and physical inactivity. These aren't just heart disease risk factors, they're prostate risk factors too. The numbers are sobering. Having diabetes increases a man's risk of developing benign prostate enlargement by 125%. Let that sink in for a moment. Not 25%, 125%. And when researchers looked specifically at the lower urinary tract symptoms that make BPH so disruptive, the weak stream, the stopping and starting, the urgency, the nighttime waking, diabetes increased that risk by 95%. But it doesn't stop there. Men with a BMI greater than 35, compared to those with a BMI under 25, faced more than a 200% increased risk of prostate enlargement. And waist circumference, which is often a more accurate reflection of metabolic health than BMI alone, tells the same story. A waist measurement of around 42 inches increases BPH risk by 138%. Even at 40 inches, the risk climbs by nearly 50%. These aren't small numbers. These are numbers that should shake us out of complacency. The root of metabolic syndrome is largely a diet and lifestyle issue, which means it's also largely a diet and lifestyle solution. Reducing your intake of refined carbohydrates, processed foods, and excess sugar while increasing whole foods, fiber, and healthy movement. This is not just advice for your heart or your waistline. It is, quite directly, advice for your prostate. 2, move your body more than you think you need to. If there is one intervention with the most consistent, most compelling, most well-documented evidence for reducing prostate enlargement risk, it is physical activity. And the good news is that you don't need to become a triathlete to benefit from it. A major literature review that pulled together data from 8 separate studies covering more than 355,000 men found that even light exercise reduced the risk of BPH by 30%. Stepping it up to moderate activity pushed that reduction to 36%. But perhaps the most remarkable finding was this. Simply walking for more than 2 hours per week was associated with a 27% reduction in BPH risk. 2 hours a week. That's less than 18 minutes a day if you spread it across 7 days. It's a walk around the block after dinner. It's parking further away from the entrance. It's choosing the stairs. It's tiny, incremental choices that compound over time into significant protection. For those who can push further, the benefits scale beautifully. Research from the Massachusetts Men's Aging Study found that men who burned around 862 calories per week through physical activity, roughly equivalent to several brisk walks or gym sessions, saw their BPH risk cut nearly in half. And men who exercised consistently about 6 times per week saw a 51% reduction. 51%. That's not a supplement. That's not a procedure. That's just moving your body regularly with intention. Exercise works on multiple levels here. It helps manage blood sugar and insulin resistance, which reduces the inflammatory cascade driving prostate growth. It supports healthy body weight, which reduces the mechanical and hormonal pressures on the prostate. It improves circulation and reduces the kind of chronic, low-grade systemic inflammation that sets the stage for all manner of disease. If you do nothing else on this list, do this. Move. Every single day. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be consistent. 3, be thoughtful about what you put in your body, including medications. This section might surprise you because we're not just talking about food here. We're talking about something sitting in your medicine cabinet right now. Certain over-the-counter medications, things so common that we don't even think of them as real medicine, can significantly worsen prostate symptoms and potentially accelerate problems in men who are already vulnerable. Antihistamines, the allergy medications millions of people take without a second thought, can relax the bladder muscle. That might sound harmless, but when the bladder can't squeeze properly, it struggles to push urine past an already enlarged prostate. The result is incomplete emptying, increased urgency, and real discomfort. Decongestants containing pseudoephedrine, found in many cold and sinus medications, work in a way that's essentially the opposite of what urologists prescribe for BPH. Doctors use a class of drugs called alpha blockers to relax the bladder neck and prostate, allowing urine to flow more freely. Pseudoephedrine tightens those same muscles. For a man with early prostate issues, this can push him from uncomfortable to genuinely unable to urinate, a medical emergency called urinary retention. Tricyclic antidepressants can also negatively impact bladder function in ways that compound the challenge for men already dealing with prostate symptoms. None of this means you should never take these medications, but it does mean that if you or someone you love is already experiencing any urinary symptoms, hesitancy, weak stream, nighttime urgency, these substances deserve a conversation with a healthcare provider before you reach for them reflexively. Knowledge is protection here, and most people simply don't have it. 4. Eat like your prostate depends on it, because it does. The best dietary evidence on prostate health comes from a landmark study called the Prostate Cancer Prevention Trial. It recruited over 18,000 men, followed them for 7 years, and used extraordinarily detailed food frequency questionnaires covering 99 different food groups, 6 beverage categories, and various food preparation methods. This is as rigorous as dietary research gets, and what it found was clear and consistent. Men whose diets derived the highest proportion of calories from fat, around 38% of total energy, had a 31% higher risk of developing BPH compared to men whose diets were lowest in fat. Interestingly, the type of fat didn't seem to matter as much as the overall quantity, though other research suggests quality still plays a meaningful role in overall inflammation levels. Red meat told a similar story. Men who ate red meat daily faced a 30% higher BPH risk compared to those who ate it less than once a week. And on the vegetable side, men eating fewer than 1 serving of vegetables per day had a 38% higher risk compared to those eating 4 or more servings daily. Put it all together, and the picture is unmistakable. A diet high in fat, heavy in red meat, and low in vegetables is a diet that puts the prostate at genuine, measurable risk. So, what should you be eating? The pattern that shows the most consistent benefit across the research is a Mediterranean-style diet. Abundant vegetables, legumes, whole grains, olive oil, moderate amounts of fish, limited red meat, and minimal processed foods. It's not a fad, it's not a trend. It is the most studied dietary pattern in human health research, and its benefits extend to the heart, the brain, metabolic health, and yes, the prostate. Think of it less as a diet and more as a return to eating the way humans were always meant to eat, before convenience food hijacked our kitchens and our health along with it. 5. Discover the power of lycopene. Now for something a little more specific and genuinely exciting to talk about. Lycopene is a carotenoid, a natural pigment found primarily in tomatoes. It is, in fact, the most potent carotenoid we know of in terms of its anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. And it has been studied extensively in relation to both prostate cancer prevention and benign prostate enlargement. In the prostate cancer prevention trial, men who had meaningful lycopene intake in their diet showed an 18% reduction in risk of developing BPH. Multiple studies have explored this connection with generally encouraging results, even if they vary in their findings. Here's something fascinating that most people don't know. Cooking tomatoes may actually make the lycopene more effective, not less. When you apply heat to a tomato, something called the Maillard reaction occurs. Amino acids and sugars interact under heat, causing browning and flavor changes. In tomatoes specifically, this process creates a compound involving fructose and histidine that appears to enhance lycopene's antioxidant properties beyond what raw tomatoes alone provide. So that tomato sauce slowly simmering on your stove, keep simmering. You're doing something right. Studies have looked at lycopene intake anywhere from 6 milligrams to 21 milligrams per day. To put that in relatable terms, a quarter cup of tomato paste contains about 19 milligrams. A single generous slice of watermelon delivers around 13 milligrams. 1 cup of cherry tomatoes gives you roughly 3.8 milligrams. Getting an adequate daily amount isn't difficult. It's really just a matter of being intentional about including tomato-based foods in your regular meals. That said, more is not always better. Excessive amounts of tomato products can lead to digestive irritation, acid reflux, bladder sensitivity, since tomatoes are natural bladder irritants, and in rare cases, other side effects. Consistency beats excess, as it does with most things in life. There are also other lycopene-rich foods beyond tomatoes. Watermelon, pink grapefruit, guava, and papaya among them. So if tomatoes aren't your thing, there are other ways to get this powerful compound into your body regularly. I want to take a moment to step back from the science and speak to the human side of all this, because I think it matters just as much as the research. Prostate problems are too often treated as a punchline. They're the subject of awkward jokes and embarrassed silence. Men don't want to talk about them. Partners don't know how to bring them up without it feeling intrusive. And so the slow, quiet deterioration continues in the shadows. The broken sleep, the constant urgency, the anxiety before long car rides or back-to-back meetings, the loss of spontaneity, the erosion of confidence and intimacy. This is not a small thing. This affects quality of life in ways that ripple far beyond the bathroom. It affects relationships, mental health, and self-worth in ways that rarely get acknowledged openly. And what breaks my heart is that so much of it is preventable. Not all of it. Genetics are real, aging is real, and sometimes things happen despite our best efforts. But the research is clear. Men who move their bodies, eat whole foods, maintain a healthy weight, manage their blood sugar, and approach their health proactively have dramatically better outcomes. The difference between a man who develops serious, debilitating BPH and one who reaches his 70s and 80s with manageable urinary health often comes down to choices made in his 40s and 50s, sometimes even his 30s. It is never too early to start, and it is never too late either. If you've made it this far and you came here for a man in your life, a husband, a father, a son, a friend, I want to say something directly to you. You may be the most important variable in this entire equation. Not because it's your responsibility to manage his health, but because we know that social support is one of the strongest predictors of whether someone makes and actually sustains healthy lifestyle changes. Men are notoriously reluctant to prioritize their own health. They delay doctor's visits, they dismiss symptoms, they push through discomfort until it becomes a crisis, and then they're frustrated that the options available to them are fewer and more difficult. Your knowledge matters. The fact that you read this, understood it, and can have an informed conversation about it, that matters more than you know. You don't need to nag, you don't need to alarm, but you can cook a Mediterranean-inspired dinner on a Tuesday night and say nothing about prostates. You can suggest a walk after dinner without any agenda beyond enjoying each other's company in the evening air. You can normalize conversations about health in your household so that when symptoms do arise, they get addressed early rather than silently endured for years. That's not a small thing. That is love in its most practical, most powerful, most lasting form. The prostate doesn't have to be a destiny. It doesn't have to be something that slowly steals comfort and quality of life from the men we love or from men themselves. The science is clear, and I hope by now you feel it too. Avoid the metabolic conditions, diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, that dramatically elevate risk. Move your body consistently, even lightly, because even a modest daily walk is doing something real. Be thoughtful about the medications you reach for reflexively. Embrace a diet rich in vegetables, moderate in healthy fats and fish, and low in processed foods and red meat. And yes, eat your tomatoes, cook them when you can, and let lycopene do some of the quiet, powerful work it was designed to do. None of this requires perfection. None of it requires an overnight transformation that leaves you feeling deprived and resentful. What it requires is awareness, the kind of awareness you now have, and the willingness to make small, consistent, intentional choices that compound beautifully over time. You are worth taking care of. The people you love are worth taking care of. And this right here is where that care begins. Not in a hospital room, not in a urologist's office after symptoms have already taken hold, but in a quiet, firm decision made today to do a little better, to walk a little more, to eat a little more color, to pay attention before the body demands it of you. Start there. Start now. Your future self and everyone who loves you will be grateful that you did. Take care of yourself. You're worth it.